Welcome to a safety step change session provided by Predictive Solutions. My name is Chuck Pettinger and I'll be presenting concepts, philosophies, and tools to help you create and sustain a step change in your safety culture. Step change process. How do we increase that sense of urgency? So in my previous session, I outlined these 8 stages that Cotter uses to help organizations create change and sustain it. So in this session, I'm going to specifically focus on how do we increase that sense of urgency? So when we're creating that sense of urgency, I like the way Cotter refers to this. He feels that people change what they do less because they are given analysis that shifts their thinking, but they change because they're shown a truth that influences their feelings. And I've seen this in many change initiatives that I've done. If we can get across to people that this is the right thing to do, that it's going to influence people, versus our numbers are terrible, we got to get the number down to 0, right? That's how we get that change to happen, create that urgency, right? We got to hit them in the heart. And in his book, A Sense of Urgency, he talks about 2 types of urgency. That sense of true urgency, where people want to become world class, they're rolling out this new process because they believe in it, versus a false sense of urgency, which is typically what I see in a lot of burning platform change initiatives. They had a serious incident and they're driven by fear. They want to try to do something so it won't happen again. And that is not the place of power that we want to be in. As a matter of fact, they've done a lot of research in Olympic athletes. And there was this article by Fries in his book that he talks about Olympic athletes. And Olympic athletes are driven by either gold medals, right? They're driven to achieve, to win, to get that gold medal, or they're driven by German Shepherds. Now, I have nothing against German Shepherds, don't get me wrong, I love dogs. But, you know, when you think about guard dogs, you think about German Shepherds, they're driven by fear. And even Carl Lewis, when he was interviewed, he said, you know, your last long jump, what were you thinking about? As well, I didn't want to disappoint my family. It was my last Olympic event. You know, again, he was driven by not wanting to fail versus wanting to achieve that medal. And I've been studying, you know, personal motivation for the majority of my life. And what's interesting, when you talk about athletes, you know, that achievement to win, wanting to win versus wanting to fail, you know, we want our organization to have the same type of motivation as well. You know, the organizations that I've worked with who really want to make a difference in people's lives versus get to that 0 tend to be more successful. It also has to do a lot with control. Back in the 50s, Rotter came up with this idea of locus of control. And the people who are a lot more successful, better business people, long-term success, they all have this internal sense of control, locus of control. They feel like they can influence their own events and their outcomes. And the people who are, you know, less successful, right, tend to blame outside forces. Well, you know, what can I do? I can't get these numbers down. And really, when you talk about safety, I think that happens. Some people say, well, you know, injuries happen, and that's that external control, right? It's not me. I can't control outside forces. So we have to shift that to really create that sense of urgency. People feel like they're going to, you know, be able to do the things you're asking. So sometimes we have to break down barriers to create that sense of urgency. Some organizations are just plain complacent. They've been doing so good for so long that, you know, why should I change? What we're doing is working. You know, they have that pride or arrogance. Sometimes people are just protecting their own job. Right? If I do good, you know, is this going to influence my job? Am I going to even have a job? Some people have seen so many change initiatives come and go that you just get non-compliance or pessimists. This isn't going to work. I'm just going to sit on the fence until some other new initiative comes by. So when you're thinking about rolling out a new initiative, right, try to motivate it from the inside out. Try to get people to, you know, act in a position of power, trying to achieve. And then take a look at these barriers and knock some of them down. Let me finish this off by giving you an example from Cotter's book. In this situation, he relays a story about a manufacturing facility that makes airplanes. A new general manager came in, and he was appalled by the lack of quality control and the schedule issues. So he looked at the processes, and what he found was that when airplanes are getting manufactured, you had, airplane A is in, position 1, and you had to finish these tasks before it could go into position 2 and position 3 and so on. But what happened is if they would run out of a particular part, then they would just have the airplane go on to the next position, and then eventually they would catch it up. Now the problem came towards the end where they'd have to take things apart to put the part on that was supposed to be in position 1. So it was slowing things down, the quality was terrible, they had to redo things, and it just wasn't efficient. So what the general manager said is, well, from this point on, the plane will not move until it is completely done at each station. And people looked at him like he was crazy because this just wasn't how it was done. But what it did is created a huge sense of urgency because the plane sat there, nobody worked on it till it was completely done. So if they didn't have a part, they really worked with procurement, with the suppliers to get that plane moving. So that really created that sense of urgency and got people, to change the way they were thinking. So that was really kind of a good example of how sometimes you just change things up to create that sense of urgency to get your new change process going. So in the next session, I'll be talking about selecting a change coalition.